Hi everybody, here's a quick little video on a PC-98 I've just fixed up. The NEC PC-9801ES from 1989. And this machine was manufactured in 1990. But this machine contains a 386SX along with an NEC V30 for backwards compatibility purposes selectable via this dip switch, which is 3-8. It's currently up, which means it's in V30 mode. When the switch is down, it uses the 386. And I picked this machine up because it's pretty much like the PC-9801RA from maybe a year or two before, except the difference is the ES uses 3.5-inch drives instead of 5.25-inch drives, which are easier to get discs for and easier to write discs for. Unfortunately, the second drive I put in from Yahoo Japan needs work. I think it might need recapping because it's just completely dead. Like, it just spins the motor, but it doesn't even try to seek. It just goes right into booting basic. But the top drive, it was broken when I got the machine, and I took that and the second drive apart to try to unstick them. The second drive broke because the ribbon cables are very finicky on these drives, and you have to remove the top screw first, pop the lid off, and then you can remove the bottom screws. I did not, and so I broke the ribbon, and so I had to get a second drive from Yahoo Japan, and I'm going to have to work on that drive. But the good news is, the top drive fixed itself. So as you can see here, there's a 386SX, and below this 9801E26K sound card, it's the mono, it's the 26K. Below that card is the NEC V30. And it's buried in here, but you can kind of see that little socket that's unpopulated is a 8087 socket, and if you look in closely, that's a V30. You just can't see it because of the lighting, but that's a V30 processor, and this is the hard disk connector. Unfortunately, I'm not even going to try using that because, one, I don't have a hard disk, and two, the motherboard took a hit from battery corrosion, you know, the dreaded NIC corrosion. Luckily, it only probably took out the clock circuit on this one instead of the whole motherboard or the video circuit like on a 9801RL I had, which was similar to this machine, where the battery was right next to the it was next to the lines for the video bus, so it took that machine out. This, on the other hand, I just cleaned it up with vinegar, and then the power supply, that was rusting. You can actually see there's some, this was probably from the power supply too, there's some nice little nasty case rust. And so what I did was I went to Micro Center, I purchased one of those ATX to AT adapters, ATX to ATX 24 to 20 pin, and I just cut the wire off and I soldered it onto the original harness because the original power supply is toast anyway. Quick and dirty fix. And then I just had it go to the floppy drive too. I soldered a nice big switch. Now, the pinout coloring is very similar to modern day stuff, except orange is 12 volt, so it goes to yellow instead. Now, if it works, well, take a looky here. It works. Let's flip the switch. And it's in V30 mode. It took me a while to find a SCSI card that works in both modes and works, but this is an IF 2769 SCSI card, and it works. Now, the floppy drive sounds heavily clicky. It sounds like a pinball machine almost. You can just hear that click, click, click. And I thought, this isn't going to read anything, will it? And then all of a sudden it did this. Today, I just dug it out, and looky here. You stand on the city of disaster, the beast city where the biological intelligence, an artificial system, what we call bias, locates. Nobody knows about what has been going on at bias. You could hear nothing but deep breathing on bias. But deep breathing of bias. The only way to survive is dehumanize yourself and face the bloodshed. I'll let you go if you can tell me which came first. Ranch or Cool Ranch? Yeah, this is the game that everybody knows the quote of from Dilbert 3, if you've ever seen that video. But this is the screamer. A PC-98 and PC-88 and Sharp X1 RPG, well known for that quote. And it's been fan translated. And it needs an NEC V30 processor to run at a playable speed, because otherwise it runs way too fast. But here it is, working just perfectly, like it should, on an 8 MHz V30. And that's the thing. These early PC-98 models are worth buying just for that. The PC-9801EX is similar to the ES, but it has sound built in. And the only reason I went with this is because I wanted a 386 and I wanted to be able to use a different sound card in here that would conflict with the onboard sound card, which I might make another video about or talk about later. But for now, this just works. And that's the cool thing about this PC-98. It has a V30. It lets you read and write 3.5-inch discs instead of the unobtainium 5.25-inch discs, and then it's a lot easier to write those discs as well. Especially because it's easier to get a 3.5-inch PC-98. So there you have it. A PC-98 that's pretty interesting, fixed up with just a set of aircraft clippers, that's what they call it, aircraft cutters or something, and a wire stripper, and a soldering iron, and a heat gun. Just to build a quick adapter for essentially an ATX power supply to the PC-98. There's nothing special about what needs to be done to get this machine going. Very easy fix. One of these days, I'm going to replace one of these drives with Gotek, simply because of the whole issue with, how do you put it, VFO. The only problem is these will only take specific floppy drives, and so I'm either going to have to get that drive working or use a Gotek. But otherwise, this PC-98 works. Quick fix. Not a lot of stuff needed to get this one going. And you know what? I paid $10 for this. I paid $10 for this PC-98. PC-98s are really built well. That's all that needs to be said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.